Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Stephen Blackmore. I am head of sales for a company called Daxtra. You've only got one more of these to go through, by the way, before we can all go and get a drink. So I'll try and keep it reasonably light-hearted. I'm head of sales, which is probably a bit of a dirty word in this kind of room. So apologies. I'm not going to give you a demo. I'm not going to give you a sales pitch. There aren't even any words in this. It's all pictures. So I'm going to try and keep it reasonably light-hearted. Just a quick show of hands. Has anyone heard of Daxtra before? Brilliant. Kind of as I was expecting. That's a good thing, I think, from this point of view. I'll kind of start from the beginning then, in that case. So Daxtra has been around for about 11 years. And we've sold mainly within the agency space. This is some of our customers. Some of them you'll know, some of them you might not know. They're all kind of agency heavy. We've only recently started launching a tailored version of our software to the corporate in-house market. So because of that, we've picked up a couple of clients in the US that you may recognize. The technology, just to give you a little bit of background, I won't spend long on this, it came out of Edinburgh University. Our two co-founders were PhD fellows there, and their end-of-study thesis was to design a piece of software that can read a book and summarize it. So Daxtra understands the context of words and sentences and phrases, and it was really originally designed to process huge amounts of unstructured data. It was then picked up by the FBI, and they used it across the whole of the US to look for commonalities in crimes. None of their State Department databases were linked, so they wanted Daxtra to process all of the data and pick up crimes from over here with individuals over here and bring the two together. The CIA then picked it up. This was just post 9/11. So they used it to monitor chat rooms for internet-related terrorist-type chatter. But it needed to be contextually relevant. It needed, just because someone mentions the bomb in a chat room, it doesn't mean they're going to blow something up. So it was there because it needed to understand contextually relevant words and phrases. And then shortly after that, we worked out that our niche was probably looking at helping large global recruitment agencies improve their workflow and their operating model. Because Daxtra essentially is a plugin. We're there to plug into any existing ATS system, CRM system, and improve the way it works and the functionality. So what I'm going to talk about, and the title of this, is helping to raise the profile of in-house teams, which I am going to talk about, but I'm going to talk about some other things as well. And these are really kind of observations and things that we've picked up over the years that we've been working, and it's going to be quite process orientated. Now, if this comes across as prescriptive, it's not supposed to be. I'm not here to tell you how you work, because we're quite new to this area. But these are processes that I think seem to be quite common with in-house teams, and possibly problems with the way that they're working, and things that maybe have just been done historically. So we'll pick out a few of those details, and we'll look at them, and we'll decide whether or not they're detrimental, and if they are there ways that you can improve those processes when adopting a direct sourcing model or moving more towards it and trying not to bring onside the agency side of things. I'm also going to talk a little bit about perception. Now, sometimes talent teams and HR departments are sometimes not as viewed as positively by your internal corporate stakeholders, sometimes, as they could be. And I'm just going to look at reasons as to why that perception might not be as positive, and ways that we can maybe look to raise the profile, and really show them the true value and worth of having an internal specialized department looking and catering for their needs. And I mentioned it's going to be, there will be some detail, looking at kind of the short-term operating models and operating processes that your recruitment teams and the way that they work. But these are sometimes kept separately, the short and the medium term. And the short-term operational model should be almost linked to your medium-term strategies, what you're looking to do in the next 2 to 4 years. So I'm going to go back now to the current processes. I'm going to pick out one process in particular, look at it in a bit of detail, and see what problems there may or may not be going on. So what we've got here is a recruitment team, and they're operating away merrily. And they, on a day-to-day basis, are dealing with a lot of external sources looking for candidates. They've got vacancies. They'll be like to LinkedIn and networking sites. You'll have Monster and the various other places. And then you'll have your ATS, or your CRM system, or your in-house source. And it's almost been left here. It's almost been kind of separated away from it all. And these guys are communicating a lot with candidates, and they're dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, but nothing's been brought back. The ATS is almost there just as a repository of CVs. And surely that's kind of defeating the purpose of why you have that. And so let's just look a little bit more. Why are we using all of these external sources? You know, they're great. They've got huge amounts of candidates. And you know, sometimes they're paid for, and sometimes they're free, generalist or specialist. But if you think about it, how good is the quality of information that you've got on these sources? How good and accurate is a candidate profile, as an example? Because to be searchable, you have to opt in, and not everybody does. And more importantly, if you're using the same sources as everyone else, and that you've got access to the same talent pool as everyone else who's got an internet connection, are you not just commoditizing your services and behaving like every recruitment agency out there? So why is there this sudden stampede? As soon as you get a vacancy and you pile into the external sources to look for candidates, why are you going there? Now, I think one of the reasons is the job boards and the networking sites, they have evolved. They are a much better place to be, so look and feel, but also the functionality. You're able now, and a key bit, is you're able to communicate with candidates directly from these external sources, your candidate portals. And so you've got your online account and you're communicating directly with them. But what that means is nothing's being brought back here in this key bit. Nothing's being brought back into your ATS, and so your internal processes are not being linked. But why wouldn't you do that? Because if you think about it, I'm a recruiter, I'm online, I'm on LinkedIn or Monster, I find a great candidate. So, right, I've got to get it onto my ATS. Well, I don't really know if that's particularly suitable. Then I've got to create a candidate record, and there's 4 other people there with the same name, and I can't really be bothered to go and look for it, and you've got to put your skills and get them to, so it's just a pain. So why would you not just stay online? Why bother bringing it back into the internal database? Now, these sources are being used because they're very convenient, but I think they're also being used because your internal ATS system lacks probably sufficient information, or the information on there is not relevant enough to lend candidate to vacancy. Or more importantly, the right candidates could be on there, but due to the poor functionality of the database, you can't find them. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. No, not that bit. So what? So what that any of this is going on? Why do I care what's going on at an operational level? Why do I care what my recruiters are doing? I'm a senior manager. I'm a head of department. I am strategic. I'm looking at business. I'm looking at workforce planning. I'm looking at succession planning. Why do I care what's going on at an operational level? Well, it's important, actually, so bear with me, because these short-term processes and the way that your recruiters are working will lend and link into your medium-term strategies and the things that may well be more important to you guys. So what this really means is this process of recording information online and not replicating it in-house means that huge chunks of the recruitment process are missing. They're not linked with the internal workflow, and this information would normally add weight and depth and structure and detail to your internal source, your CRM, your ATS system, and build it up as a resource for your department. I'll show you a little bit more about what I mean. Your database is your currency. It's what makes you different from every recruitment agency out there. It's been created over time and should have the combined thoughts and knowledge and experience of every recruiter that has passed through your department. It should be much, much greater than the sum of the parts, and more importantly, it should reflect your needs as a company from a talent perspective, and also the long-term aspirations of candidates and their thoughts and feelings towards vacancies past and present. It should be far more than just a repository of CVs and a place that you keep candidate details. I'll look at it at a slightly different way in a tangent. So why do you have talent departments? Why do you have recruiters? What are they actually there to do? These people who sit on LinkedIn all day, interviewing all the time, what are they actually there to do? Well, on a basic level, obviously they're looking at vacancies that your company throws up, positions they need to fill, And your recruiters are there to look for candidates and bring the two together. Doesn't sound too hard, does it? I think I could probably do that. So, okay, well, let's have a look. We've got some skills here. Okay, I think I've got an idea of what those skills probably are. And then experience. So I need people who have worked for a particular sort of company. Well, I think I've heard of that company before, so let's carry on. And then you need someone who lives in a particular location. Well, I know where that location is, so I think I'll crack on and have a look at some candidates. So here's my candidates. And I know this candidate's got more or less the kind of skills that I think this vacancy needs. And big tick for me, so that's good. And then we're looking at the experience. Well, okay, well, I've heard of those companies, and they're more or less the same kind of thing. They're in the same vertical. So I think that's another tick as well. I'm doing quite well. And then we've got the location. Well, you know, he lives nearby, so that will probably work as well. And I think position filled. But it's not that simple, is it? So when I said skills, yes, I need people who have skills and have this understanding, but I'm talking about succession planning. I'm talking about what they're going to be doing in the next 3 years' time. Can they be promoted through into management? And experience, yes, I need people who have worked for this company, but they need to understand about the other verticals. They need to understand about competitors. And when I said location, yes, they live there, but I want them to relocate in 3 years' time. And none of this was made apparent within the brief itself. So what I'm really saying is that recruitment, if it's done badly, if it's just looking at the most obvious requirements, and you try and bring them two together, it's just creating a bad reputation for everyone, whether it's agency side, whether it's your guys in-house. But if you spend the time to do it well, if your recruiters look at the hiring manager, understand what they want, look at the hiring department, look where they want to try and be in the next 3 years' time, then they speak to the candidate, find out exactly what it is, what really makes them tick, what's their career progression, will the two of them match? If they spend the time to look at it at this sort of depth and level, then I think you could almost describe it as a fine art. Because don't forget that people are the competitive advantage of any company. If you don't have the right people on board, then your company is nothing, essentially. And more importantly, if you're starting to do this, if you're providing the right sort of people to your company as a whole, then you're really starting to prove the worth of having an internal talent team and servicing your company as a whole. So if we can agree then that recruitment done well is valuable, it's something brilliant to have, then how do you start making the bad recruiters into good recruiters? How do you quantify that? How do you say to someone who never really does that well, you see that person who always gets the best candidates, the best vacancies, go and be more like them. Go and do what she does, be a good recruiter. But you can't, really. But what if you could? What if you could capture that? What if you could capture the essence of being a good recruiter? What if you could bottle it? The smell of success? What if you could drink it? What if you could drink it and say, right, now I will become a good recruiter? Again, you can't. But what you can do is learn from your good recruiters. Capture their thoughts, capture their experience, capture their thoughts on suitability of candidates, why they're good, why they aren't good. Get all of that information into the ATS system that I was talking about. Don't keep it all online, because then no one's going to learn from it. And more importantly, if you're not doing this, when they leave, all of their thoughts and experience just go out the door. When really, this sort of information should be adding weight and depth and substance to your CRM system and your internal sources. Because if you're not doing this, then why should other departments necessarily rely on you as a specialized source of talent who knows the company, who understands it, who knows where they need to be? If you're not doing that, then why would they not necessarily just rely on another agency who may be able to provide them with equal or similar value? Now, agencies would give anything to have what you guys have. I guarantee they would give vital body parts to have the level of exposure and understanding and requirement from hiring managers to understand the personalities and who's going to be successful in particular roles. I think agencies at most might get a 1 or 2 hour meeting with the hiring department and maybe with a manager. You are far, far better positioned to understand the company culture and the personalities that are involved, who they like, who they don't like, who would fit in and who wouldn't. Now, agency staff rarely get this level of exposure into a company and, more importantly, how it operates. Now, more importantly, you're going to have visibility of candidates past and present, of again who's been successful. And if you've been recording it, you'll understand what your excellent recruiters have thought about particular candidates. Now, it may be that your existing database lacks a bit of depth and information, but if you're using the same sources as everyone else, if you're not bringing that information back in, if you're not feeding the ATS or CRM system to make it a more powerful resource, then you're not even following a process that's going to allow it to improve. And that database is actually becoming less and less fit for purpose. So I've been speaking from a relatively low level, in detail, about processes and ways that we can improve processes when looking at a direct sourcing model. Now, I think there's also a very powerful and large opportunity for your teams to help raise their profile by making sure that they also understand what your company's business objectives are over the medium term and making sure that they're meeting those requirements. Now, I'm probably speaking about something that you'd be familiar with, which is workforce planning. Now, I'm not going to go into this in any detail because I don't really know a huge amount about it, and you're going to know far more than I do. But I am going to touch on why it's required, and more importantly, I'm interested in the results that a project of this sort of nature is going to throw up. Round about the time of gap analysis. Now, it's easy to understand where you and as a department need to be over the next 12 months, as an example. You know, what your immediate sourcing requirements are and needs and the vacancies you need to fill. What becomes a little trickier is looking at the same thing but over the medium term, say over the next 2 to 4 years. Now, as heads of department, senior managers, you will hopefully understand what your business objectives are and what they're trying to do over that period. So you know, they may be looking to expand geographically, they may be looking at launching new products and services and moving into new verticals, or you may even be changing the business model out of a service-led industry into something else. Now, you'll also know that each of these objectives are going to require something from you as a provider of talent. So you might need X number of candidates with particular skills, you might need some leaders, facilitators, you might need people with a technical understanding if you're looking to move into a different vertical, or you may even have to change the company structure if you're looking to change the business model itself. Now, where I think technology can add some real help and insight here is looking to analyze what your existing talent network looks like. And I'm not talking about looking at your existing staff members and the skills that they may have and that kind of succession planning type of thing. It's more understanding about what my existing talent network looks like, who my recruiters can actively reach out to now. What does that look like? Because the majority of gap analysis says that in order to plug these gaps, it needs to be through new hires. So what I have, what I am currently capable of giving, how does that compare with what I actually need? Where are my points of failure? What are my weaknesses? And more importantly, do I have the tools that will allow me to look at this kind of thing in these level of details? Can I have that visibility across my internal systems and allow me to act accordingly? Because clarifying this sort of internal visibility, understanding where you are, these are some of the best ways of making sure you're meeting your company's needs and requirements they're going to place on you, but more importantly, making sure you've got a strategy to plug these gaps. So these gaps that I talk about, could big data, or what we kind of understand as big data, could that hold the key to locating these skills, these individuals, plugging these gaps that I've spoken about? And I'll give this a little bit of context now, because I think everyone's got much more of a better understanding of what big data is. A couple of years ago, we weren't quite sure. It was one of the most overused phrases, I think, of 2013. So what we generally now understand is big data is looking at multiple external sources, huge amounts of data, processing it to find trends or outcomes for something that's quite specific. So I think that's generally what people call big data. Now, when you look internally, and you're looking at analyzing your existing data and your current capabilities, then I really think that's some kind of analytics. So for purposes of here and now, we'll call that small data. Now, what I'm talking about is looking at large amounts of specific external data for a very specific result or outcome. And I think for now, we'll call that medium data. Now, in Daxtra's operating model, on a day-to-day basis, we process about 3 million CVs a month globally. Now, what that gives us is an idea, an understanding of a picture of skills, of where they're located globally in certain pockets of areas and geographies and the kind of places that you might need to look if you're trying to source and plug gaps within some analysis and project work that you've done. So once you've got this basic view and understanding that you know you're going to need people in a particular geography, how does that compare with the people who are actually there? What does that actually look like? And then more importantly, can we start being a bit clever? Can we start looking at this almost from a socio-demographic point of view? How has the presence of skills, how has that changed over time? Are there certain institutions which are churning out individuals with those particular skills which will always be there? Or has there been a mass exodus of skills out of that I need to be aware of? And more importantly, does that coincide with my company's expansion plans over the next year or so? Because skills, does it confirm it? Because skills have always been in abundance in that region. Or has there been a recent movement out of skills, and therefore that expansion and that location, should it be reconsidered? Because once you've got this kind of level of visibility within your internal systems, enhancing your existing tools, linking the processes that I was talking about earlier, then you're really starting to improve your process. And that, I think, is key to meeting the requirements that your internal corporate stakeholders are going to put on you as a department that's supposed to provide them with talent. Because let's not forget, if you are containing all of your information within your four walls and keeping it there, then you're allowing your team to become more and more specialized. You're allowing the resources to become richer and more complex. They're growing in detail. And ultimately, that, I think, is leading to an improved performance of the department and servicing your company as a whole. So just before I finish, I just wanted to go back to that original slide. So what we had here is a process that barely touched anything internally. You had a recruitment team that were communicating mainly in the cloud. Very little of that information was being brought back. Now, if we look to try and change that a little bit, if we break down that wall, if we try and bring the database round a little bit, if we look to try and improve... I know, I've got the magic box. Now, if we try and change that, if we try and make it almost harder for them not to use the internal system, not to use your internal database, look to improve what you guys currently have and stop them communicating in the cloud, make that grow in detail, make that do what it's supposed to be doing, which is making you different from every recruitment agency out there. And then more importantly, once you've got this level of detail, this improved level of visibility, then you can start linking it with what your talent network looks like. How does that help? How does that work in the medium term with where I know where my company needs to be? Now, this improvement of internal processes, what you're doing is you're bridging the gap. You're bridging the gap between your external resource, your external internet, and your internal resources. You're completing that circle almost. And what that, I hope, will do is prove to your companies the true value of having a talent department, because you're meeting their every requirement above and beyond. Hopefully, it will also mean that perception that you have or they have of you will remain positive and grow in positivity, and mean, more importantly, that the existence of the talent departments remains justified. And that's me.